Well, I had a chance on this subject to talk to Princeton Liemon, the US Special Envoy to Sudan. When we come to the transition from one Sudan to North Sudan and South Sudan, what are the chances of that being peaceful at the moment? It's not far away.
I think it's going to be overall peaceful. I think the two sides really are committed not to go back to war, but it's going to be bumpy. There are some issues that they haven't resolved on oil, on ABA, on borders, and there's still some suspicion back and forth about support of proxies like militias. So I think they're going to get there. I don't think they'll go back to war, but it's going to be a bumpy process.
ABA was not part of the referendum on the split between
That's
North
correct.
and South because it was so contentious, and now it's proving exactly to be that. When President Bashir says ABA is part of the North and will remain part of the North, and others threaten war with the South if the South tries to claim it, how do you proceed from that point?
Well, the president was responding to the South issuing a draft constitution which incorporated ABA in the South. So he was responding, and it's an indication of how emotional and politically contentious this issue is. It's going to be very difficult to resolve. I think it's possible to resolve it. I think you can meet the basic needs of both communities, but the two leaders, President Bashir and President Kiir, are both going to have to compromise on it.
And compromise on the sovereignty of ABA, or will it be a shared
Well, I think the details of it, I think, are to be worked out. But there are ways to meet the basic interests of the two communities, the Noktinka and the Miseria, but neither one would get 100% of what they want.
But by July, which is when all this is supposed to happen, it's unlikely to have been resolved by then, isn't it?
I wouldn't say that it's totally unlikely. The African Union high-level panel is going to come up with a new proposal back to the presidents, and we'll see if they can come up with a proposal and backed by the rest of us that will be acceptable.
And the fighting, you talked then about suggestions that the North was actually funding some of the militias, rebel commanders fighting the Southern Sudan Liberation Army. Not so very long ago, more than 150 people killed. I mean, it has reached a dangerous level.
It's a dangerous level, not to the degree that it threatens the SPLM overall, but it's dangerous. People's lives are being lost. It's detracting from state building. And the South accuses the North of sponsoring some of these militias because they had fought with the North before.
What's your view as the United States on that? Is the North funding these militias?
Well, we have said to both sides, don't support proxies vis-a-vis the other side.
But do you think they are?
I think there's some indication that at least people are doing it from the North to the South. Whether the government's involved in that, I can't say. But the government, in turn, accuses the South of helping the Darfurian rebels. So we've said to both sides, look, this is dangerous, it's destabilizing. Both sides, if they're doing it, should stop.
We'll get on to Darfur in just a moment, but regarding the friction between North and South, there was such a terrible civil war and so many people lost their lives. What is the danger of slipping back into that? What would be the consequences?
The consequences would be tremendous for both sides. You'd have the instability in Sudan. It would ripple out throughout the Horn, and with all the difficulties now going on in the Middle East, it would be a terrible situation. I don't think the two sides want to go back to war, and I think if they're careful, they won't go back to war. But I do think there are flare-ups that are going to happen. Maybe violence in ABA, maybe violence breaking out in some border area. And the key is, do they have the institutions to contain that violence and bring it back under control? That's the key. Institutions,
one thing, the will another. If they have the will, how do they prevent it getting to that terrible stage?
Well, the will is important. Both sides have to realize that to allow themselves to slip back to war is to undo all that they really want to do. But then you have mechanism, for example, on the border. They're talking about joint patrol mechanisms, that both sides would have joint military entities all along the border. If a problem broke out, those entities could immediately meet, get together, find out what the source of it was, keep it under control. Now we have the UN helping to do that. Hopefully the two countries will be able to do it on their own.
In less than a week, two of the sides involved in the Darfur conflict, the government of what will be North Sudan and the Justice and Equality Movement and a few others, have to give their thoughts on a new peace initiative. May the 7th is the time for that. You're pretty hopeful that some progress is being made. Talks here in Qatar. Do you think you're getting somewhere?
Well, I think the government of Qatar deserves a lot of credit for sponsoring these, helping keep it going for now 2 years. And it's the only peace process going on with the rebel movements. What's hopeful is that we now have two significant movements participating, and the government of Sudan is participating. You have the GEM, the Justice and Equality Movement, and you have the Liberty and Justice Movement, LJM. And they are working toward an agreement, hopefully by May 7th.
But it won't include everybody. This is part of the problem, isn't it?
It won't include everybody. That is part of the problem. So it has to be an agreement that others feel attracted to and would join in the process subsequently, either to sign it or to participate in adding to it. But that's the real challenge.
And in Darfur at the moment, how do you assess the humanitarian situation?
It's a serious one. There has been fighting that has produced another 70,000, 80,000 displaced people recently. There's fighting that breaks out in various parts. There are still 2 million people displaced out of their homes. That's a major humanitarian situation. So I think Darfur needs a lot of attention by the government, the rebel movements, the international community. It's gone on for 8 years. We've got to get it settled.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.